Hi, this is Andy Summers on Lifeminute TV, talking to you. Watch the show.
Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light.
Iconic guitarist Andy Summers continues to leave an indelible mark on the music world with that distinctive guitar style and sound that helped define the sound of the Police more than 40 years ago. Since those days, he's released 14 studio albums, written several books, and is currently on tour, performing against a projected backdrop of photography that he's taken throughout the years, all while sharing readings and musings from his life and work with the crowd. The Cracked Lens and a Missing String is making stops across the country through November. Andy stopped by the Lifeminute Studios recently to tell us all about it and more. This is a Life Minute with Andy Summers.
Obviously, all my life I've been a guitarist, and I took up photography, and it's become another obsession, passion, which I spend serious time on. The odd thing is that I didn't combine these two things before, so this show is a combination of my music, my guitar playing, and photography, which we've worked out into a sort of, a multimedia show, basically. I show various sequences of photography, and I play special music for the sequences, and that's sort of what it is. So you'd have to be into me and my thing to enjoy it. But there's solo guitars with backing tracks, very exotic photography from all over the world. And that's what it is. And honestly, I think it's going really well. We generally get a standing ovation every single night. People seem to really like it because I think it's a bit different. And I don't think it's an entirely new concept, because if you go back to the 1920s when they first had silent movies and you had a guy on the organ playing below, we're still there, but of course I've got all my incredible guitar technology and a beautiful screen. It's fun for me to do, and it's multimedia in the sense that we've got film, photography, music, and I talk and tell stories, so on and so forth.
And photography, that started for you while you were touring with the Police.
Yeah, I mean, it was a moment not very far from where we're sitting right now in New York City, and people were catching on to this band is going to be the biggest band in the world, and we were surrounded by photographers. I started to look at the equipment, and I started to kind of, wait a minute, this is kind of interesting. I think I want to get into this. Yeah, so actually one of the women took me to B&H, the great photography place in New York City, and I bought a really good camera. And I said it was like a formal decision, which was based on nothing. No idea of whether I really would be any good at it, but I'm going to be a very good photographer. And let's hope the gods are with me. And off I went and took a lot of really bad pictures. But then I started to get better. I studied it, and I became friends with someone like Ralph Gibson, who was probably the world's greatest photographer. And, I got mentored to a degree by him. But I was very passionate about it. And oddly, all those years with the Police, I photographed everything from the inside. That's where it started for me.
What a treasure that was. What a good idea.
Well, it was great. No one could get what I was getting, and I had a pretty zany idea of, for instance, we do the show and all that, blah, 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 and there'd be people there, but eventually you end up back in the hotel. Then I would start taking pictures, and I would invent all sorts of crazy ideas in the corridors of hotels and do things. I was looking for surrealism. So I'd be in all these kind of boring hotels, but I would try to make something out of it with a camera.
I think you said it was powerful for you having that camera.
When I got the camera and I started to really get into it, it's like the world woke up, or I woke up to a whole visual sense of the world, and I started to see everything. I turned a switch in my head, and so I had a very different way of walking through the streets of New York or whatever, because I'm seeing angles, colors, shapes, lines, and, in a way I didn't really before. Because I started to go around with this sort of frame like this, and it really brought that visual sense alive. It's odd. I think I was so obsessed with music, but it, sort of rode over everything. But I think this was the emotional birth of it. When I was like 14, 15, 16, I went to a cinema in my hometown, which was called the Continental. And they showed the films of Truffaut, Fellini, Godard. So I was seeing all these very beautiful black and white art house movies. And that's, I think, where the seed came from. And when I got later on at this other time in New York, I think I was sort of recreating that emotion because I was shooting black and white. And so there is a sort of a background to this. Because I was very passionate about seeing all these films. I was a real cineast at teenage years. Yeah, I think that's where it came from.
such an interesting career. You were given a guitar at the age of 6, was it?
No, not 6. 6, I was doing piano. I'd played piano from 6 to 11. And then I got given a guitar by an uncle, and it was a battered old guitar with one string missing. And I absolutely fell in love with this little battered old thing, and I finally learned to tune it. It was all painful at the beginning, the first few chords, and off we went. But I was absolutely, at that age, had a passion for it and was obsessed with it. And, you know, that was my life. I knew that this is what I am, I'm a guitarist. By the time I was 12.
And then you were classically trained as well.
Yeah, I went to university in California eventually, and I played classical guitar only for about 6 years, and I was very deep in that repertoire. Yeah, because it was an extension of being seriously involved in music, you know, studying theory, you know, incredible harmonic stuff, and then, you know, using the classical guitar as well, you know. So the right hand is working very well, so I have those chops, as we call it.
There's something about the sound that you make on that guitar that is not, you know it immediately when you hear it.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, I think, you know, when I was a kid, you know, and I used to read Downbeat magazine, American magazine, I think, jazz. But, you know, one of the things that was always coming across to you was you must find your own voice. What's your voice? You know, what's your signature? You know, instead of being like a, you know, blatant copyist and just playing in style and not pushing out the boundaries of that, I always had this mantra in my head that you must find your own voice. Who are you when you play a solo? Why does it sound like you and not someone else? So, you know, you go through all these mental sets trying to be a musician, trying to be a great improviser, being able to just like so familiar with the fretboard that you can play anything, anywhere. Yeah, you know, so that was instilled in me before I was even, you know, 15 years old. You know, it's trying to get growth as a musician. You listen, you copy. Of course you copy, because that's how you're going to learn your instrument. How the hell did he do that thing? And you work at it, I got it. Okay, so you do it there. Well, it means you could probably do it here, or you could do it here. And so you start to build this little repertoire of what early on we call licks. But you're building a vocabulary of being able to play your instrument.
Who were your influences growing up?
Well, you know, I mean, at that age, loved Wes Montgomery. He was a great American guitar, incredible, genius guitar player. I loved Jimmy Rainey, who was a very lyrical, marvelous improviser. I loved Kenny Burrell, dark and bluesy. I liked Grant Green. These are the ones I listened to. You know, I mean, everybody wanted to try and play like Wes Montgomery at that age. Well, if you were into jazz, I should say, you know, because his solos were very lyrical and very clever and beautiful, you know. And this is what I did. I'm playing a record at 16 1/3 instead of 33 1/3, a black vinyl album. So instead of going, ba-do-ba-dib-ba-dib, it's gone, and you slowly get it, you know, and then you
smart.
bring it up to speed. It's fun, but it's painful, and it's slow, but, you know, it fully concentrates you on your instrument, in this case, the guitar, the neck of the guitar, and how to do it. Marvelous, you know. It's a kid learning and being obsessed. It's very healthy. Passion, you know, very interested in something.
What inspires you now?
Outside of, you know, any media, if somebody's really doing something that's fresh and you go, wow. We were traveling around on this tour, and we're up in a place called Lexington in Massachusetts, I think. There's a great guitar store called the Guitar Emporium. I walked in, the guys were all great, and I just, nice, you got Martin there, the usual, the Strats, the Gibsons. Then I saw this other little guitar. I said, what is that? I don't know what it was. It was shaped differently. It had a beautiful whammy bar with it, like a Bigsby, and coloured knobs, and the neck was short scale. And I picked it up, and it was bright yellow. Wow, this is special. You know, anyway, got the yellow guitar, and I went straight on stage with it. Never done that in my life. I got this little yellow guitar, and I went straight in front of an audience with it, and I'm playing it. I'll play it tomorrow night too.
That's great. That's great.
That inspired me. Yeah. Who would have thought?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
How many guitars do you have?
I don't know, about 150, 200 or something. I don't know.
How many solo albums do you have? Is it 14?
15.
15, okay.
Plus a lot of collaborations.
What's your creative process like, and how has it changed over the years, or has it changed at all over the years?
Well, you learn about this, trying to write music. Where does it come from? Obviously you get educated and you realize, you understand there are structures, there are things that the song's going to need. And I mean, for me, I'm trying to find something that's different, not just playing the standard straight ahead style. So what it entails in reality, for me, I usually just play into like a Zoom recorder and I notate the ideas. I mean, sometimes you're just sitting there like in the dark waiting for something to arrive, you're fiddling about and I'm heading towards something. It sort of has to present itself. There's a sort of mystical element to this where the music eventually will arrive. So you have to trust the process. You have to have your fingers on the guitar neck. So you become very intimate with all these moves you can make on the neck of the guitar. So these are very guitaristic notes that I put down so that when I come back to this piece, and this is to all of them, I've got a clue, and I curse myself. I go back, and I go, oh, that's really cool. Oh, damn, I didn't say what it was. Because what I've learned, painfully, I'm recording for 2 minutes, and at the end I say, okay, I'm playing in A minor. I've got the E on the 12th fret, the B string is open, I'm playing a C on the 4th string, and I haven't even got the tonic note in it. Okay, now I've got a clue. So you work out these little processes to get you into composition. And I start in my little casita, then I go to my real recording studio, big speakers, really clear sound, and I make a much better version of it.
Amazing. So it's a process. It's intentional. You're in a string of bands, and then the police happened.
Well, the Lord was preparing me for the big band, I mean, I'm a musician, and a lot of the time, for most musicians, probably 95%, we're all desperate for a gig, like anything. I started off being in a great rhythm and blues band in London that was very successful. So when I sort of went, okay, I'm going professional, and I moved to London with Zoot Money, we were successful very quickly. And so I only knew success. I thought, well, I played in a band for almost 5 years with great success. And now I'm down and out in California, and I went to college, and I sort of got through that before I went back to England and sort of resurrected again in London. And I had come back to the electric guitar, picked up my beautiful Telecaster in that period. I was on the scene, and I was starting to get pretty well known. And the odd thing is it led to a band called The Police, which is in the so-called punk scene where you weren't supposed to be able to play. So it was a path.
Tell us about the train story. For those who haven't seen the documentary or read your memoir, tell us about that.
You mean getting off the train?
Yeah.
Well, I was doing quite well. I was getting a lot of calls by that time in London. Everybody sort of wanted me to play with them. There was an album called Tubular Bells in England, and it was #1 for 2 years, made by a guy called Mike Oldfield. And I was very involved with Virgin Records. Mike Oldfield did not want to play it anymore. And they turned to me and said, would you go and play it with the Newcastle Symphony Orchestra? I said, sure, I could use the gig. And it's like a sort of star turn. I was the guy with the whole orchestra. So great moment for me. The concert was divided into 2 sections. There was a band called Last Exit playing, and Sting was in that band. 2 months later, or whatever it was, I was up there playing with another band I was in, and we all ended up in a hotel in Newcastle. And there was another band there called Curved Air, and I was lying on the floor with this lanky young American guy who talked a mile a minute. It was Stuart Copeland. Next situation was this other guy got me into the studio to do this one-off show in Paris, and he was putting this band together, and he said, I've got these 2 guys, they've got a band called The Police, and I didn't know, whatever, So I'm there, and Sting and Stuart were there, and this guy, Mike Howlett. So we started playing, and it was going quite well. So this is the first one. Then eventually Sting came up to me and he said, I was in that thing when you did, with the Newcastle Symphony. I was in the support group. I said, oh, yeah, man, nice to meet you. And then the other guy, the drummer, came up and he said, do you remember we were lying around on that floor together? So you think the Lord is at work here. This is kind of mystical. So we were sort of meant to be together, and there's more than one occasion of that. Yeah, anyway, well, not to go on forever about this, but we did that whole thing. We played together in Paris, then I went back to what I was doing. But, I think all 3 of us went, this was the band. This was the band. This is the band. And, you know, Sting and I got on the phone and we were going, yeah, man, you know, yeah, you should be in the band, right? You know, I said, yeah, but you got that other guy. So we were having these sort of soulful conversations, but I wasn't in the band. Then I got on a train to go into central London, and I got out at Oxford Street, and as I got off the train, Stuart got off the train with me. He went, oh, God, what a coincidence. See, the Lord was at work. So we sat down and have a cup of coffee. We went, yeah, you know, so probably he said, but that'd be 2 guitars. I said, no, I'm only 1 guitar, and you know who it is you're looking at. He said, well, that's difficult. I said, well, that's it. I would do it, but it's got to be me, you know. So that's where it was. You know, there was a certain level, and, you know, Sting was, you know, reasonably educated as a musician. And so the two of us were very much coming from the same background, which was sort of jazz, blues, bossa nova, Brazilian music. You know, he was really into all that. And so when we got together and started sort of writing, that, you know, there was an amazing sort of mesh because of our backgrounds that we really, you know, it's magic.
Yeah, and even that 3, you didn't see very, you know, 3 guys. That was rare too and different. And
the trio is really the strongest, the trio, and we also went, well, we're going to make more money if it's a trio. We don't want to add a 4th guy. We, you know,
thought of that.
because we had nothing, we had no money, we had nothing. We were absolutely down to, you know, living on the street at that point. Which is great because, you know, you go from a situation like that and you gradually build it until, you know, the rest is history.
And then add Stuart. Oh
Stuart
my
was
God.
incredible. I mean, at that age, you know, a really sort of unique stylist, great hi-hat player. I mean, you know, it was one of those, you know, once-in-a-lifetime things.
When did you really know, wow, this is going to work?
I'll tell you when we really knew, because we were struggling, just desperate, you know, and so we could just about manage to get ourselves to New York, and we played at CBGB's. It felt very good to us immediately, better than the UK, where we were sort of spat upon by the current scene, and CBGB's, they loved us. And we did this little tour up the East Coast here, and we went as far as up to Boston, I think, and we did some gigs in between. We played the Rathskeller in Boston, which was being very heavily promoted by the DJ in Boston called Oedipus, round the clock of Roxanne. And we sold out the Rathskeller for 4 nights in a row, and we were just thrilled to do that. That was sort of the marker. But then we went back to England, and there was nothing. So we thought, well, that's it. It's the end of the band. We're finished. And then the Lord struck again, and there's a band called the Albertos, and they were going to do it. They were quite big in England. They were going to do a 21-date tour. It started in the West Country of England at Bath University, so we could be on the bill with them for £50 a night. And so that saved us. That was a lot of money for us in those days. And so we went down to Bath University as the support group. So we were this humble little support group. Okay, we'll play first, then the big band comes on. But we went on stage, and we were really hot because we'd just done 3 weeks in the States. So we were on fire. That's the way it was. And this hall was kind of filled with punks, 1,000 kids, mobbing the stage. It was like a riot when we played. It was incredible. The Albertas were standing over on the side of the stage with very pale faces, like, we made a big mistake. Yeah, every night was a total riot for us. And that, after we did that first show with them, we went, we're going to make it. This is incredible. Every night was like that. It was a riot. And from there on off, we went to be the hottest band in the world, and they couldn't stop us.
When did you know it wasn't going to work any longer?
Well, I don't think of it in terms of negatives. I think about the Police, it was so big, you know, people don't realise it now because it's such a while back, you know, but we were like the Beatles. It was worldwide phenomenon. We only played stadiums, you know, it was incredible. We were playing to 50, 60, 70,000 people a night. And we played very well right to the very end. You know, we were a great band musically. And I think, you know, one of the lead singers just decided that he had to go out on his own. The weird thing about it is I think because we sort of broke up ahead of our time, didn't play for the next 30 years like some bands, it left a lot of like very, you know, people still want it, you know. It left a lot of power in the music that we had done.
Synchronicity, 40 years, right?
Well, it's coming out now. The new,
Yeah.
well, and apparently it's looking very strong, right?
Going to be special editions and
Yeah, all that, yeah.
all that jazz.
Yeah, I mean, somebody asked me, well, what did you decide about? When did you decide about? I said, I didn't do anything. The record company did it, and they tell us. I go, all right, great, if that's what you want to do.
That was not one of your favorites, right?
I think the second album was, for me, we really sort of got our style, and I think it really came together on the second album, which was made in 10 days. You know, we were playing all the time, so we were kind of on fire. You know, we were really a unit, playing unit. So for me, the second album was where it still hadn't gotten too sophisticated. I mean, Synchronicity is more polished, and we're kind of studio pros now, you know, whereas the second album I felt like it's still got that rawness and that freshness.
What are some of your favorites to play live? Because you still play them, so.
Message in a Bottle always, of course, stands at the top.
I hope that someone gets my message in a bottle, yeah.
Great piece of songwriting from Sting, and that's the one I think people really respond to. It's a very original piece. I love that. In my show, I play, you know, because I have to play some of it. I can't not play it. I did it for a while. I would play Message in a Bottle as a solo guitar piece. But I play that in the show, Bring on the Night, Roxanne. I've got a really great version of Roxanne. I don't dislike anything we did. I'm honest, it's me.
It was all amazing. Do you still communicate with the guys?
Not a lot. I mean, we are in communication, basically because we have a very heavy past. You know, we're talking about business and finances and all that stuff and record releases. So it's more related to that, not like, hey man, what are you doing today? You know, we're not like that at all. We had a very intense relationship that went on for about 8 years, and so we move on. You know, of course, we're always going to be attached. We're never going to ever be able to get away from it.
People think there's like a rift between you and Sting. Is that?
Oh,
Not-
I could get up and call him right now. Not going to.
Do you think there'll ever be a reunion someday?
I don't think so, because we've done it. I mean, it was fantastically successful. Name another old band that can sell out stadiums all over the world. We could do that again. I don't think it's going to happen, but I never say never. You know, I just say, the door's open. Call my people. That's where I'm at with it. You know, I have another band in Brazil, and it's called Call the Police. It sort of came about gradually because I play in Brazil a lot. And I go down, I'm this great singer-bass player from a famous band, Rodrigo Santos. So we were doing a bit of a mix at the beginning. We did a few shows, but we needed the power of a famous drummer. So we got the drummer from the Paralamas, and that kind of powered the whole thing up. So it's like an all-star band now. And so we got sort of, not drifted, but we went, it's all Police. We just play all Police hits. It sells out everywhere, all over South America, and it will be a great laugh, great fun.
You spent some time with John Belushi. I have to ask you about that. What was he like?
That's a great guy, very funny, you know, fun to be with. And as you would imagine, you know, his sort of professional presentation, that's who he was. You know, he was a fun guy, you know. I mean, it's a little bit sad, actually, because, you know, he died at a young age. I was going to do a movie with him. He gave me a script to read that we would do. I was reading the script one night, and I was looking at it, and the phone rang. And it was someone who worked with the police, Kim Turner, and he said, I've got really bad news for you. I said, oh, what? He said, Belushi died. And I had the script in my hand. And so it was so sad, you know, because I was here in New York with him. I was in Indonesia with him. I was in LA with him. And we were having a kind of fun hookup, you know. It was great. But anyway, so that was one of those things.
Any guitarists of today you particularly like?
Well, there are several great American guitarists, you know, obviously like John Scofield, Bill Frisell. The one that's good, in my opinion, pretty youthful, is Julian Lage. He's more of a jazz guitarist, but he's very talented, and I think a fresh, interesting voice on the guitar scene. So he's the only one I would name at the moment.
Would you have changed anything during the time going through everything you went through? Would you have done anything differently?
Not really, no. No, I enjoyed all of it, you know.
What does music do for people?
Great music elevates the soul, and, you know, all art aspires to the condition of music. Music is our highest form of expression. Since the caveman first struck the wall of the cave with a piece of wood, and then he let out a yell, that's where music started. And it led to Andy Summers.
Sure did.
You know, I like playing the guitar. You know, there's something around it is discipline, but I also actually just enjoy it and working things out, writing music. I never think of it as work. I've never thought of it as work. I thought, this is who I am, it's what I do, and I love it. That's it. You know, it sounds simplistic to say, well, I'm just a guitarist. No, you're playing music. It's intellectual, it's physical, it's an expression. It's a great thing, you know. It's not, you know, being in some stupid rock band and just like, you know, trying to get girls and take drugs. There's more to it than that.
Well, it shows clearly, you know, it makes
Well,
all
I'm
the
doing my
difference.
best. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
To hear more of this interview, visit our podcast, Life Minute TV, on iTunes and all streaming podcast platforms.